any optimal movement is going to be more like the 1-inch punch. We get loaded up into this position and we see this efficient weight shifting and rotation pattern happen. Any movement that's associated with inefficiency, movement impairments, pain, injuries, surgeries, right? And ultimately, like I'm saying here, fatigue, right? Poor performance is associated with this idea of not being in this optimized 60 to 40 weight shifting that mimics more of what we're going to see with the limping pattern. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
Good. I'm not being a dead horse, am I? I feel like this is kind of an important thing to really understand. Okay, good, because it's a spectrum of movement, right, that we're looking at. And the most elite person can go from this person on the right side to the person on the left side in 1 minute, in 1 second, right? So all you have to do is have an injury, and immediately you start going into this pattern, right? So now you do this for years and years and years and years, even subtly, right? Now this is obviously a big, exaggerated example of watching this head go off the center line type of thing, right? So what we would see typically also is that this left leg here would end up, again, as she was going into, it looks like a female, maybe it is a male, we won't go there, right? We're not allowed to go there. I was just listening to a video about gender differences before I hopped on here. But typically, this person, as that swing leg on the left side comes out, it's going to be way outside of the base of support, which when you look at running, you primarily have 2 flaws that you'll see with running that are talked about. You have, number one, you have first what's called too much backside mechanics, right? Which means, like, say on the butt kicking phase, right, of running, you're seeing that heel strike or that heel flying away from the body real far in the back. And it's kind of like when little kids run and they kick their heels out to the back, right? In powerful running and then elite running especially, that heel cycles perfectly right underneath the butt and the hamstring, so the foot falls down right underneath the center of gravity so they can land on it. Again, the body being in this power position as it goes to land, so you can swing your arms and vault off of that leg, right? But again, what we see in limping is the exact opposite. And on the more important thing that I think that we try to coach in running is overstriding, right? So I eventually kind of came to the term that overstriding, all that it means is that your foot is falling outside of your center of gravity and outside of the base of support necessary to align your base of support with your center of gravity and ultimately this power position idea, right? So anytime that the foot is landing outside of our base of support in a certain amount of magnitude away from the center of gravity, it's going to be, number one, it's going to be a longer lever, right? So we're going to see a longer lever, which we talked about before, increases the torques at the joint and doesn't allow you to absorb force. And because of that, because it's harder to absorb force with that limb outside of the base of support, you basically are going to end up increasing pressures at the joint, and you're not going to be able to reverse and use that elastic energy to change directions as well, which again, it's ultimately what we see in every single injury, right? Whether it's falling, and I reach out and I fall and I land on my outstretched arm instead of tucking it, or being able to absorb, or the same idea with going to plant and cut with an ACL injury. That foot is outside of the base of support as you're going into that change of direction, which in that change of direction, you need that weight shifting and rotation to come out of it. So when that leg gets stuck out to the side as you hit, you can't go into that smooth side bending and rotation that comes out of it. Does that make sense for everybody?
Yep.
Right. And again, to final, to kind of the final take home on this, look at the head position and look at the limb position, right? And I don't know if I talked about this before. There's a cool study that looked at the torques on the knee that's on the ground relative to the arm position in football players and lacrosse players. So if I'm holding the ball in one side versus the other, or I'm holding the lacrosse stick in one side versus the other when I go to plant and cut, if it's on the wrong side, it increases the force vectors to the knee dramatically, because now you're getting these force vectors that are going tangential directions, you know, in the coronal and horizontal plane, away from the natural movement and alignment of the body and the knee particularly. Make sense? Okay. So now we're going to get into